Welcome back to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman. We continue now our focus on the ongoing dispute between Westchester County and the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development over housing discrimination. In our last segment, we heard from HUD Regional Administrator Holly Light. We'll now hear from Ned McCormack. Ned McCormack is the Communications Director and a Senior Advisor to Westchester County Executive Rob Astorino. He spoke with Rich earlier today.
I was saying to our guest last segment, 5 years ago or so, we were in this very building in the debate that I thought, in what was a close race, kind of cemented it for your guy to win and beat the incumbent Andy Spano. And in part it was over this suit that came down, that people thought that the former county executive mismanaged the situation that got us into the place in the first place, and then the deal itself. But I never thought 5 years later we'd still be talking about this thing. Do you have any reason to think that we are very close to a resolution on the final outstanding items, or in a month's time, could Westchester look at losing another $5 million because of this ongoing stalemate with the feds?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is Westchester is very proud of the progress that we've made so far. The county executive inherited this settlement. It wasn't something he was for, but as he said on day one, this is what I've inherited. In this country, we abide by the rule of law. This is the law, and we're following it. A lot of progress has actually been made. If you look at the numbers of housing that we've already built, we're into this 4 years. We have over 400 units with financing in place. We have over 300 with building permits. This is ahead of schedule. So think about this when it seems like things are moving slow. 400 units of housing built in Westchester, 100 a year. Go to Home Depot, get a shed, go to your local zoning board and see how long that takes.
The perception, though, by far in the main has been that the county's been dragged kicking and screaming to even get to this point. And there's still some outside, there's still other elements of the deal that have yet to be complied with. The deadline, you guys got an extension until June 7th, where you have to meet the outstanding guidelines, or else the county's going to lose, on top of the $7 million it lost last year, another $5 million in grants that the county says it needs. Now you got the Board of Legislature, we're going to hear later from the program, they're working independently now with HUD to try to resolve those outstanding differences, and it doesn't seem that the county exec is too crazy that they're dealing with HUD as their own legislative body. Well, in fact, he's threatened to even veto it if the deal comes across his table that's got their signature on it.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, there is no June deadline in terms of the money. The money cannot be reallocated until September. So that's just a deadline that was created by HUD and the Board of Legislators. The second thing is, you talk about the county executive vetoing this. I don't think it's clear that the Board of Legislators will even pass this legislation when you look about what is HUD actually asking for.
In terms of, though, defining some of those additional challenges that they believe to be persistent, that Mr. Kaplowitz, who we're going to hear later on in the program, is going to work to define for HUD, and then also a plan so that they don't come back to it. I think there's the rub, though. The county exec doesn't believe that there are impediments here that exist in the county, and it seems that everybody else acknowledges, okay, they're there, let's fix them. Rob doesn't seem to agree that the impediments even exist.
Well, the impediments that exist for housing in Westchester, in a lot of places, is income. Westchester is a very expensive place, but that's where we all live in. And the point is that anybody who can afford to live anywhere in the county should be able to do that, and the county executive will defend everybody's right to do that. What HUD has introduced is things that go beyond the settlement that aren't in there. They claim that there's exclusionary zoning, but we did an analysis of 853 zoning districts, every district in Westchester, not just the 31 eligible communities. And you know what? We found that there is no exclusionary evidence based on race or ethnicity. And that's just not us. Pace University Law Land Center did a separate report and concluded the same as we did. The monitor even came out and concluded that he could not find any exclusionary zoning based on race or ethnicity. So there you have it. But maybe the best proof is, if the zoning was exclusionary, how could we be ahead of schedule in building these actual units in these communities?
But you know, it's not just the units, it's the long-term thing to finally get HUD off your back here to say, okay, we're not only in compliance, but you know what, we get it, and going forward, this is our plan, so that you guys don't have to come back to Westchester County in the years down the line and come back to the same issue. Obviously, that the former county executive acknowledged was a problem, otherwise why would you do the settlement? And the Board of Legislature signed off on it as well. So everybody seemed to acknowledge 5 years ago, okay, we screwed up. There's a plan in place. They can point fingers as to who did it, not your guy. But it's now that 5 years later, we're still debating about whether or not there was a problem in the first place, and there should have been a settlement even in the first place. And you say you guys agree, and you're going to live to the letter of the law, the agreement, and yet you're still saying there is no discrimination. There shouldn't even have been a suit in the first place.
Well, you've got to go back to what's in the settlement. And the settlement says that we have to build 750 units in the 31 eligible communities, spend at least $51.6 million. We are doing that. People need to read the settlement. This is a contract. When one party says something is in the contract, that doesn't mean they're right. You have to go and you have to look at what has actually happened. And, you know, we've done 8 analysis of impediments. The last one took in more than 1,000 pages of documents. We are doing this. We have found that there is no evidence based on race or ethnicity. This is what we were asked to do. Every time we give HUD what they want something more. It goes on and on and on. But that doesn't mean we're wrong. At some point you have to ask, is HUD being unreasonable?
Is this an issue beyond Westchester, as your boss is obviously the Republican nominee here for governor in New York, or will be? To that end, he's mentioned Long Island. Hey, if it can happen in Westchester, it can happen in Long Island. He's responded to some ads that Governor Cuomo put out on this very issue against him. He seems to be indicating that he's happy to talk about this as a defining issue for him as a candidate between now and Election Day in November. Am I reading it right?
Well, I think this is an important issue because what Rob believes in is he believes in home rule. And home rule in New York State is protected by the New York State Constitution. And we believe that the best law is made locally. And it's not that local officials are wiser than the federal government. Nobody's got a monopoly of wisdom. But what local officials are is they're closer to the situation of actually getting things done. We're dealing with bureaucrats in Washington that have no idea of the complexities of actually building this housing or what we're trying to do. I mean, when we talked to them the first time, they wanted to know what all this green was north of 287. We told them it was the watershed. The reason there aren't buildings there is because that's the drinking water for New York City. This was new information to them.
There's just the general sense, though, that a deal, whether it's a good or a bad one, a deal is a deal. And the inevitability of this is you're not going to win. So the longer you drag this out, forget about the PR that the state gets or the county gets unfairly of being discriminatory, because I don't think that's a fair tag to apply to the county. There's also a monetary penalty that goes along with this. Isn't there an inevitability that everybody looks at to say, we haven't won at any stage of our fight, Alenzis, other than racking up legal bills? Let's just bite the bullet and do what we got to do and put this thing behind us.
Look, there are important principles here, and one of them I just articulated. It's the principle of home rule protected by the New York State Constitution. And the question is, do communities want their local officials to decide how they are developed, or do they want bureaucrats in Washington to do it from HUD? County executive is on record time and time again. Discrimination will not be tolerated, but there is a difference between zoning and discrimination. Zoning protects communities in the sense that it says what can be built. It has nothing to do with who can live there.
Your gut, now, do we have a deal on this thing? Does Westchester still get the funds? Does it get that block grant money here that right now is in limbo?
I think this is very difficult in terms of what HUD is proposed, because if you look at the letter that was just sent to the Board of Legislators, they're asking for 9 assurances, and these are really demands. And what are these demands? They boil down to 3 things. One is we have to find exclusionary zoning in our communities, which we haven't found. Number 2 is the county must repudiate its own findings. This is important because they want a law codified. So if we have to take away all our defenses, the county will be left with no way to defend some lawyer coming in. And the third thing is open-ended. We have to investigate our communities till HUD says we can stop. The problem with this is it relitigates the settlement. It opens it up. It becomes 2.0. And it's open-ended. The settlement was supposed to be for 7 years. That's what we signed up for. We're going to live to the terms of the first settlement.
And so it continues. Obviously, you've guys got, not just with this, but a very interesting summer and fall ahead of you, does Mr. Astorino. Of course, we'll be watching. Ned, thank you so much for a few minutes.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for the opportunity.
After the break, we'll be rejoined by Richard Fresh, political journalist and author Dominic Carter, and the chairman of the Westchester Board of Legislators, Michael Kaplowitz, to get his position on the housing debate. That's when we return.